All right. Well, it is effectively a minute past the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for all you who have taken time out of your busy schedules to join us today. We're here to talk about how elite professional services firms, law firms, accounting firms, and so forth are today insourcing their service operations in 2026. And we're going to explore what might be the pros and cons and the merits in doing so. Before we dive in, just a couple quick housekeeping items. Just want to make sure that we let you know that some of what we might cover could be forward-looking in nature. Simply ask that you take that under advisement. But if you haven't joined a 3C Logic webinar in the past, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Guillaume, G for short. I am the ServiceNow practice lead here at 3C Logic. And it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker and co-host, Casey Ferguson, who is the Vice President of Solutions over at Halo Kinetic. Casey, good to have you.
Nice to be here. Look forward to talking to everybody about what we can do with 3C Logic, ServiceNow, and everything in and around IT and beyond.
That makes two of us. All right. Well, speaking of agendas, we've got a fun one today. We're going to kick it off with Casey, who is our industry and resident expert. Who's going to talk about sort of what is the state of the outsourcing industry? What are some of the economics before we progress into how does ServiceNow, together with AI and 3C Logic, address some of the challenges that Casey is going to dive into? And then, of course, we'll end with a case study, but only after we do a little bit of a brief live demonstration, just to give you an idea of some of the things that we're going to be talking about, but showcase it live. And then we'll try and conclude with a couple key takeaways. Before I hand it off to Casey, in the event anything we cover raises a question on your part, feel free to use the Q&A section, and we will be monitoring that proactively. And if we have an opportunity to get to your question, either over the course of the presentation or towards the end, myself or Casey will do so. But with that, Casey, I'm going to turn it over to you, right? So I know we wanted to kick things off with sort of an idea of what is the state of outsourcing, the industry as a whole. Go ahead and walk us through a little bit.
Definitely will do. And just as a preamble about myself, I came from 20 years of IT help desk, service operations, and network operations, management support, and engineering. I'm speaking on behalf of not just ServiceNow, but also the ways that you can run and operate ServiceNow to make IT systems better, but also how they can expand out to business work streams. So with that being said, we're going to transition right into the thing we're talking about today, which is what you can do with the platform you own. If you have one or you're looking at bringing in your own service management platform like ServiceNow, and ideally it is ServiceNow. What we're seeing is really a fact of the matter that the traditional outsourced service desk model, where you're using somebody else's platform, using somebody else's support and knowledge, is not really designed for anything beyond ticket resolution. It isn't designed for a true customer experience. It isn't designed for business work streams, and it isn't designed for you to automate and integrate your systems. There's still a purpose for those things, but in general, we're seeing time and time again with firms that they want a little more control and they do want to expand out into systems that are supporting adjacent business functions, and they do want to automate and start improving the user experience for IT. So with that being said, we're going to go over some examples and processes on how we can get you there. But first, we're going to talk about your challenges that we're seeing today. And I can't speak on behalf of everybody, but there are quite a few challenges that can be solved very, very quickly. And there are others that can't be solved until you begin this first step of your journey. So the first one we're seeing is that this traditional IT focused model, and IT is very important. IT runs so much of the business. I have a soft spot in my heart for IT leadership trying to do the best they can with the funding and budgets they have. But it is restrictive when you're using an outsourced model, using other people's tools, and you don't have control or the ability to connect those tools to your systems. And that big restriction is really connecting workflows and connecting business services out to your organization, as well as a better user experience, taking those issues, taking those tasks, and getting them done quickly. And when you have multiple vendors, including an outsourced MSP, as well as multiple vendors running these tools, that becomes practically impossible. And what we wind up seeing is misaligned goals, right? So when you're trying to get the goals done, you are bringing in these objectives and items. If you want to click forward, there we go. And success is really measured in the MSP and ticket platform by ticket services. And honestly, IT has that pretty nailed down. SLAs, task management, all of those things, help desks and IT have been doing for ages, right? And it's a ripe data set to make things better. But what it isn't giving you is control over that data set, how you need that data to look, how you need those automation opportunities to be presented to you. And when you're not thinking in workflows and connected systems, and you're just thinking, I need to resolve a ticket and I need to do that 40 times every day, you start creating a big gap in the actual outcomes. A ticket is actually not necessarily a good thing. Why did this ticket happen in the first place? How can we prevent those tickets from happening? That methodology can be solved across the board when you unify on ServiceNow. But what you need to do is get that single system. You need to get that visibility that expands into a service-oriented platform. And service begins at intake, right? So a lot of systems and tools, if you're handling IT tickets, come in through a phone call. They come in through an email, but they lack categorization. They lack analytics. They lack intelligence. In ServiceNow, if you start intaking all these activities and get it into this one big black box, you get insights. You know how to start improving that. But until you've done that, if these workflows and processes live in emails or standalone tools or legacy SQL servers living on some box under some person's desk, it's too much to understand and you can't begin solving the problem. So when you treat a platform as just a tool, you're really hindering your integration. What the platform is the engine that drives the workflow automation, the AI opportunities, the user experience. And ServiceNow has many, many capabilities across the board to help you get there, but you can't begin that transformation until you can focus in on one tool and one platform. So the more you can do to bring that work into your organization and the control over to how you need that data to operate, including that user experience, you can't innovate as quickly as you want, and you can't get the data you need to talk about numbers, cost, your total cost of ownership, or anything like that to go get the budget to do things, right? So what we're going to talk about here is just some methodologies on how we can get a better insight and line of visibility to reduce your total cost of ownership. So in the traditional model, what we see time and time again in firms is the MSP, an outsourced provider, is handling some level of service desk operations. The intake of any ticket is triaged, handled, worked, and ideally resolved on first call. The MSP with that model tends to use their own platform. It could be ServiceNow, it could be other tools, but they also own the user experience. They own the phone system. The emails go straight to the MSP, and any way of organizing the data is in their hands. And what typically we see is you get reports. You may have access to a platform, or you get an email or a weekly meeting explaining the tickets, but you have no control over remediating those problems. If anything, you're just focused on bringing a number down, an SLA, an average speed of answer, a time to resolve, all those things, but you're not seeing the big picture on how you can actually make the changes to do that. You're leaving that control in your hands. What we've seen the last couple of years is a more hybrid model where, yes, you absolutely need 24/7 round-the-clock support and skills that you may not want to staff on hand. So the MSP still owns a service desk, but we've seen many firms go out and acquire their own ServiceNow and integrate that to the MSP. And that's when they can begin automating key workflows. They can start deploying their own tooling. And most importantly, they can start expanding beyond IT, supporting things like HR, finance, facilities, accounts payable, accounts receivable. All those teams and operations can run in ServiceNow in the same platform. And on the technology side, this becomes easier and easier. First, you're on that path to full insourcing to where you have full control. And to do that, to get your total cost of ownership down, you need the data to understand how can I best optimize my team, my staff, my resources, and give the best experience I can in the meantime, so you can truly compare the cost of all of your options in front of you. But when the firm owns the complete service experience, you can start truly innovating, automating workflows, creating voice agents to self-service, getting resolutions in people's hands, and most importantly, breaking down silos and removing barriers and friction to approvals, to knowledge. And the thing we see the most is that full visibility across your whole business. A big dashboard, and I'll give you some examples in a few minutes here, showing how things are going. And it can start with IT, but it can expand well beyond that. And this data, this unifying into ServiceNow, having control of this data is how you reduce total cost of ownership. You begin to understand how much each ticket costs. You begin to understand how much each call costs. And you start working on optimizing that while never losing sight of what you're really trying to do is make your organization, your firm, a better place to work and get people billing and make partners happy and all of those things. So with that being said, there are ways to do that. And what the gate we're going to be covering and what G is going to go over here in a little bit is how 3C Logic can really help that experience. Nobody honestly wants to go to a portal and fill out a form. And to get people using a tool, we got to go top to bottom and look at solving beyond IT. So let's talk bottom up here. A unified platform is approached in a layered approach. And those that know me and have spoken to me know I'm kind of a bottom up foundations first type of thinker. You can't get insights without getting good data, a good understanding of your workflows, and a better user experience. So people are actually using the tools that you're giving them. At the data layer, this is where an MSP can't really do this. Some might offer it, but in general, integrating your HR stack or your ERP is not really happening in an MSP's platform. At best, you might be integrating your security, your sign-ons, and things like that. So we want to get all the data into one platform. It doesn't mean ServiceNow is the sole source of truth. There's almost never that in a lot of cases, but you have visibility across your entire IT stack, your entire user experience, as well as one central point of control. And this is big for compliance heavy folks, people that are going through audits, SOC, FISMA, ISO audits, all of that. The less things you have to put into the scopes of those audits, the better. And it all begins on your data and security layer. The one that's near and dear to our hearts is the workflow layer. ServiceNow is a workflow platform. And workflows can be as simple as a simple ticket coming in and assigning to somebody, or complicated with nesting decisions and approvals. But in general, a lot of these workflows aren't happening in any system. They're happening in an email. They're happening on a SharePoint page. They're happening in a shared mailbox. And what ServiceNow affords you is transitioning those into a tool where you can actually get visibility and control, but also make that experience better. A lot of these legacy workflows require a lot of chasing down information. And that chasing down information impacts the user experience. So ServiceNow is deep and wide. It has portal functionality, integrations to your collaboration tools like Slack, Teams, Zoom. You can publish and share information across all channels while having centralized control of that information. And that all empowers the first level user experience, somewhere that a third-party MSP can't really handle. They have their own knowledge bases to support your users for your IT tickets, but they do not know how to answer a question around how do I update a purchase order or how do I book a meeting for a conference room on the third floor of building 2, right? All of those things can be first provided with knowledge, but also second automated through a voice agent, through a chat, through whatever you need to do. And we approach those automation opportunities through that insights layer, right? You start putting the work into the platform and you see the work, and then you start automating the work. So how do you monetize that investment? How do you justify spending the money, the time, the effort to move to something like ServiceNow if you haven't already? It's where Halo Kinetic can help you a lot. We often spend our times looking at legacy platforms, looking at offline or I guess semi-online processes, like how emails are flowing. And we begin documenting the workflows for you, understanding the intake, understanding the volume, and then figuring out the best way that ServiceNow can help you with the most efficient investment that you can provide. ServiceNow can do anything you want it to do, which is a great thing to say, but a very challenging thing to make a decision off of. So we like to come in and help you make the most of your initial investment, get those foundations figured out, get those integrations up, get people working on it, and then make those decisions. So that one platform, that one data model is unique. There aren't many, if any, tools out there that offer a single place to store all this information, all these integrations, that single layer of audit control and security. And ServiceNow brings that. So if you don't act today, what ultimately winds up happening, and those of you that run IT teams see it time and time again, sometimes often outside of your control and shadow IT. Those business stakeholders, those people are going to go buy another tool or they're going to ask you to deploy another tool. Um, the more you start using ServiceNow, the more you start optimizing it for teams, the better stories you have to tell for the rest of your organization, but also the more capable you are to deploy more. And what better way to come to another organizational unit or department and talk about what it can do for you than your own feedback on what it did for your own organization, how it made your items better. So we can attack that a number of ways, but we always want to be focused on that user experience and those digital channels, and ideally getting out of email, getting into voice agents, getting into chat bots or just direct chat interactions to create objects, both for the user, but also for the IT agents themselves. Oftentimes, the most painful part of the day for an IT staff member or anybody working task is the act of entering tickets. And 3C Logic can help a lot on that front. It can populate the tickets, it can give you the ideas, it can clean it up, and then ServiceNow with the Now Assist AI features can streamline that information to give you better insights. Bad data in creates bad reporting, and we see that time and time again. There's too much information in the tickets to make a decision out of, and we want to optimize that using things like platform analytics, workforce optimization, and put quality assurance at the forefront, right? We want to be able to see that information and give you that unified approach. So with that being said, visualizing data. The art of the possible here is that data visibility. You cannot get to dashboards and you can full screen or enhance on this, but we'll be providing the collateral after. But there are plenty of demos and we're happy to show you some of this stuff. These high-level success dashboards are built into ServiceNow. Like this data that you're seeing in front of you at the C-suite level, at the IT stakeholder level, is all driven from tickets. And if you abstract this could apply well beyond IT. It could be HR, it could be finance, it could be facilities, like I mentioned earlier. Everything operates the same way in ServiceNow, but can be fine-tuned to those departments. And ServiceNow has bespoke applications that are tailored specifically for those departments, including security layers for HR and other things like that. So at the lowest level, going right back to the beginning about what an MSP can provide, a ticket report with SLAs for a help desk is great. But you can't act on that data and you can't make the decisions. And what ServiceNow affords you is the ability to put those into goals, to put those into plans, to build optimization, to use predictive intelligence AI features and optimize your staff across the board, but as well as a readout tied back to business values or actual costs, things that don't typically come in your way, and get that unified visibility to make a better strategy. With that being said, I want to hand the mic back over to G on what 3C Logic does here, and then we're going to loop back and kind of close out this story. So I appreciate you listening to hear me talk for a few minutes, but I'll let G get going here.
No, I think it's fantastic, Casey, and I appreciate, that context because I think you're right. At the end of the day, typically CRM contact center have been treated as, separate markets, even though they solve, for CX, they're two sides of the same coin. But the reality is the engagements that you would expect in an outsourcing MSP type, model, is only as good as the data it has access to. So you've laid a very strong foundation, an explanation as to why ServiceNow is very relevant. Why are we talking about contact center in the context of ServiceNow? But when we do talk about sort of that side of the equation, right? You think about managed services, you think about insourcing, right? At some point, you do expect that individuals are going to call. Now, traditionally, the knee-jerk reaction is we want to reduce calls and push people to self-service, digital channels, chatbots, knowledge base. So ideally, voice becomes or remains that point of escalation while you address the more repetitive, high volume, low value type of inquiries. But voice has traditionally really remained, separate, apart, disconnected from platforms like that of ServiceNow. And so in many firms, a significant portion of the service interaction, still, begins with a phone call. So whether it's partners, attorneys, or staff, frequently they prefer voice communications for urgent or complex needs, right? But again, if those interactions exist outside of the ServiceNow platform, then those conversations are not captured as structured data. So you're not feeding and enriching that foundation, Casey, that you spoke to. Their workflow context is lost, so you don't have, any historical reference when the next call occurs. Analytics, you highlight analytics and the importance remaining complete, and knowledge generation opportunities are by as a whole missed. So when we look at voice, one thing to recognize is voice has remained a stubbornly dominant preferred form of engagement, right? I like to say voice has always been that channel we love to hate. The reality is people call usually because they feel like they've exhausted any and all other options available to them. What's interesting though is voice is going through a pretty significant change right now. In fact, as a result of AI, the expectation is that voice traffic is going to increase, not decrease. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use voice AI to help, triage that increase in volume. But the reality is, there is this resulting surge in voice heavy ticket volume because the types of requests that are coming across are more complex. Complex to the extent that maybe people don't feel comfortable or don't think it's an efficient way to express their issue to do so over chat or digital means. I mean, at some point, it might just be easier to just have a conversation rather than type, a long email or chat. At the same time, when you look at some of the enterprises that a Halo Kinetic, ourselves, ServiceNow serve, there's a budget constraint that's going on right now. There's a services squeeze. CIOs are under an enormous amount of pressure to, find savings wherever they can to pay for a lot of these AI, investments and projects that are taking place. And the most logical place that people cut first is the service desk. And that has, a double-edged sword. Yes, it reduces expenses, but it can also be at the expense of the experiences that you're hoping to provide. And so it's one of the reasons we see some organizations looking to recoup or take back or insource their operations. They want to have control, not just over the expense side of the balance sheet, but also make sure that it's not at the expense of the experiences of the individuals that they serve. And then the other thing to keep in mind is, I alluded to AI and voice AI, and everyone's very excited about the potential it can bring when it comes to solving everyday needs without always having every call escalated to an individual. But the reality is, if call volumes are going up, individuals are still going to be an important part of any service operations. And if you look at the studies, there is still an inherent preference to speak to individuals. Now, if you're insourcing your operation, you might realize that that is not a scalable solution. You don't want to increase headcount just so that you have always a live individual at the other end of the call. So what is the balance there, right? But how can you make sure that the human element is incorporated into your broader insourcing strategy? And what is the appropriate balance between the two, right? Anything to add, Casey?
Yeah, it's exactly that, especially in the legal industry and a bit in the finance industry. Um, the urgency for deflection or an automation experience at the front end is less there. Most people want to have a call. They want to have a personal experience. They want to talk to somebody, and that's part of the challenge we face is that, yeah, you can put a portal in front of somebody, you can put a chat bot out, but if the most important users, your partners, their legal assistants, their other people refuse to use those, you're stuck in email. You're stuck in a call center. And I shouldn't, I guess, use stuck, but in general, that call center experience is not always a positive one. And what 3C Logic can help you do is make that better, get faster responses, not have to staff people around the clock to answer a call in 3 seconds, but get them 3 seconds to an answer, or at least to the right person. And that's a powerful tool, especially for a global firm of any size, because it's very, very hard to staff around the clock. And a lot of the most important calls tend to happen at 8 p.m. or 1 a.m. And you want to give them the ability to at least try to solve the problem. And that's something MSPs can try to do, but as a whole, won't have the institutional knowledge of voice agent you build with your knowledge, your framework, your company's information. And that's what this can really help you with.
Yeah, and if we go back to the that framework you had before, right? This is the exact same framework, but with one noticeable change, which is the contact center, the voice AI component is woven into the ServiceNow foundational stack, right? It's not something you integrate to as yet another endpoint solution. It's not another integration. It is actually integrated into the ServiceNow platform so that it leverages that single data model. It leverages the existing workflows, is complementary to those digital experiences, Casey, that you alluded to, and it is, feeding those insights so that the context of the conversation during and after is actually brought back into ServiceNow so it can serve additional optimization, use cases, whether it's, creating resolution notes, whether it's creating call summarizations, or, just having that context available to deliver that white glove experience the next time, the same caller calls back, right? So the idea here is that contact center is a native extension of the ServiceNow, build out, if you will. So again, if you insource and own the platform, you now also have the ability to own the experiences, not just digital ones, but extend it out to those voice experiences as well, which to your point, Casey, you can, lead a horse to water, but if the preference is to call, you want to make sure that that is an incorporated part of the experience, not an afterthought, as part of your broader ServiceNow strategy, right?
And I would say, just to add, is that capability here to expand beyond IT. There is nothing that prevents, and we've seen this in firms, from creating a contact center experience for things like payroll issues, for things like expense report problems. You can give that voice agent that whole experience, or a straight routing capability to the right people, versus a hotline, or just calling, Jane in that department directly. And then the biggest thing to me with what 3C Logic can do, since you're getting this data, there's intelligence behind that conversation. It can trigger workflows. So that call goes beyond an IVR experience. Like, that data payload at the interaction level can go trigger automations. It can go do things. It can create action. That's something you cannot do anywhere else.
100%. Well, I mean, you basically gave me a perfect tee up here. So for our audience, we actually went ahead and recorded an example of what a voice AI experience might look like. And in the interest of time, we're just going to focus on one specific use case, which is an automated use case, a voice AI use case that's going to lead to a self-service outcome, right? But before I actually go into that video, and the reason we record these ahead of time is, with it's a lot easier in terms of audio settings and so forth to do so you can actually, enjoy the experience both as the caller and the recipient. But let me walk you through a little bit about how these things are actually done. What we did for today's example is we actually integrated with ServiceNow Workplace Service Delivery, right? Casey, you kind of alluded to an example of someone wanting to call in to book a conference room. Relatively simple use case, right? So what we have here is you have the ServiceNow platform. We didn't build out anything too aggressive here, but imagine I'm an organization. I've got two different sites. And if I pick specifically the Maryland site, let's make sure, there we go. You'll see that within that specific site, we have a number of different rooms available, right? And the thing I'll draw attention to is that each of these rooms have a certain amount of capacity, right? Some conference rooms can, field more people than others. And the reason I'm going to highlight that is this is the information that, of course, can change in real time that the voice AI agent is going to reference. So it's going to do the intake, but it's also going to intelligently then determine based on, and we'll pretend it's you calling Casey, based on Casey's requirements, what among the rooms that are available, what is the one that's going to actually fit Casey's needs, right? So this isn't just about booking a room, it's about booking the right room and to do so in the most effective manner without necessarily having to defer to a live individual. And the way in which we go about doing that is if I switch gears here, what you have here on screen is the 3C Logic Voice AI Hub. This is where you can build your own homegrown voice AI agents, right? And I'm not going to go through and give you a tutorial on the entire thing so much as hit on the highlights. So you can see here you have a dashboard. Interestingly enough, you can see, what is the success rate for the AI agents that you've deployed. And the way in which we approach agents at 3C Logic is typically you want agents that are very specialized in one purpose, right? So I've got a bunch of specialists, if you will, one of which is Chris here. And Chris's job, Chris is really good at booking conference rooms, right? And the reason you want to create very specialized functions is you want to reduce the opportunity for hallucinations, right? The broader scope you give an agent, the more likely they may go off script. Again, that's one of the perhaps cons when it comes to non-deterministic based voice AI agents is that you want to create guardrails, and the broader the guardrails, the more likely they might go outside the intended experience that you're looking to deliver. So you can see here, Chris has a very specific set of capabilities. Again, he specializes in handling inbound calls for conference room bookings. So this is where you can set his description, his purpose. You can also provide, in this case, personality, everything from languages to determining how verbose, humorous, formal, informal, friendly, and so forth. Do you want the individual or the voice AI agent to be? And then you can assign specific abilities. Abilities is, um, you know, uh, quite literally what it sounds like. It's the ability to tap into ServiceNow to either find out something, update something, or create an action. And in this case, what we're going to see is part of this workspace ability that Chris has. He's going to be, or she is going to be able to go into ServiceNow and actually reference those tables that I showed you. And in relation to the request, which is I need a conference room, create that booking and ideally provide one that is relevant based on the a number of individuals that the individual requires. So with that, let me just make sure that volume's up here a little bit. Let's go ahead and listen in and see what that experience might look like. And again, short and simple for the purpose of this webinar. These cases, of course, can be expanded upon, but let's go ahead and play it out.
Hi, my name is Alex, an AI assistant. How can I help?
Yeah, hi. I need to schedule a conference room, please.
Sure, I can help with that. May I have your name, please?
Yeah, it's George Sane.
Thank you, George. What location is the booking for?
It would have to be in the Maryland office, please.
Got it. What date would you like to book the conference room for?
I realize it's last minute, but ideally tomorrow, please.
No problem. What time will the meeting start tomorrow?
It's going to start after lunch, so say 1 o'clock.
Thanks. How long will the meeting last?
Most of the afternoon, so 5 p.m.
Just to confirm, you want the meeting to last from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m., correct?
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Great. How many people will be attending the meeting?
We're expecting 7 at the moment.
Due to the immediate request and the number of attendees, only one conference room is currently available that suits your needs. That is room 3 on the first floor. There is a code for this room, which you will need to get at reception once you check in. Is there anything else you need?
Yeah, can you make a note that we will need AV equipment as well?
I'm setting up your conference room reservation for tomorrow afternoon with AV equipment included. Your conference room booking is confirmed with request number WREQ000153. Thank you for choosing our service. If you need any further assistance, feel free to ask. Have a great day. All right, so I refresh the screen here, and if I go into this new record, sure enough, you'll see that one was created to reserve the room. So you can see a single reservation for myself from the hours of 1 until 5. It went ahead and jotted down the fact that we will also need AV equipment as part of the reservation. All right, so relatively simple use case. The reason we kept it basic is, in the interest of time. But what you can see is this is a completely conversational end-to-end flow. I said tomorrow. I didn't give a date. It confirmed since I was a little bit loose on the time zone, give or take 1, until 5. It added the fact that I need AV equipment. Again, fully end-to-end in a conversational format. But what you see here is the tie-in between voice AI as the engagement layer, an intelligent engagement layer that can understand intent, and taking on the intake. What are the things it needs to know to then determine what is the room that I'm eligible for, assuming that it's available, using ServiceNow as that source of truth, and then triggering off that action within ServiceNow to actually book the conference room, right? So you can imagine these are relatively basic use case, and we would normally recommend, when it comes to voice AI, you'd normally want to try and hit those high volume, low value use cases, whether it's a password reset or booking catering, things of that nature. And again, to Casey's point, it's a way to make sure that you're still serving the individuals that may stubbornly choose to call instead of going through a portal, but do so in a way that doesn't necessarily increase your costs. And now you can do it and own these things in-house without having to rely on an outside party. So you can manage, change, adapt these experiences over time, which can deliver quite a bit of value. Anything to add, Casey, before we carry forward?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to cover a little bit later, but I think the key point there is it doesn't just make the ticket. The ticket is an anchor point to other actions. And this could trigger through the Microsoft Teams spokes to actually book the room in Teams. All these things can happen with zero intervention, or if you want to put an approval layer and then somebody clicking an approve button. So step A is make the ticket, do the work. Step B is automate it, right? Make it faster, make it a better experience for everybody.
100%. Now, again, I don't want everyone leaving thinking, okay, well, voice AI, this is the silver bullet. The reality is, to my earlier point, we think it's a balance between that and the human element, right? And it's up to you as an organization, if you're insourcing your operations, to determine, how much you want to go to live individuals. To Casey's point, do you want them involved in the approval process or not? That's going to be different by organization. But in instances where the engagement has to get escalated or transferred and assisted by a live individual, what you have on screen is an example of how AI can still enhance the live agent experience as well. The way in which we view AI is, instead of it being something that replaces your staff, it's something that augments your staff. So what you can see here on screen is an example of the real-time transcription on the left. So if for some reason my engagement was going sideways, it could get transferred to Casey, and Casey would have visibility into everything that myself and the voice AI agent may have covered, as well as perhaps an automated case in terms of what was already been accomplished. And then Casey can run the ball from there. You can see how the summarization is done. Because we have real-time transcription into ServiceNow, not only can that drive next best actions and search for knowledge bases and so forth proactively for the individual, but when the call is done, the individual can move on to the next engagement. They don't have to worry about taking notes. The real call transcription is already there. And Now Assist with ServiceNow can actually provide the summarization. So at the same time, when you talk about insights, and I know Casey hit on the significance and importance of insights, now at a C-suite or at an administrative point of view, I can rely on the quality of those summarizations because they are built on the actual conversation that occurred. It is not reliant on the quality of the notes that the agent may or may not have taken, right? And we can all debate how good those are. So this just gives you an example of voice AI in action, but also how AI, when a contact center like that, 3C Logic woven into ServiceNow, can also optimize the human element. So doing more with either the same or over time, perhaps fewer headcount. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Casey, because you wanted to talk a little bit about sort of what is the framework, what's the blueprint look like when we take a step back.
Of course, and I do love a blueprint, but I'm going to put one big heavy caveat in there is that this is a high level approach. Every approach we take with clients is approach that's tailored to what their business needs. But this is the way to get started, right? First, on the leftmost side is ownership of the platform of operations, your platform of things. And ServiceNow is where we're centering this conversation. That is your workflow orchestration engine. It's your system of action within the organization. That's all handled through things like service catalogs. Those catalogs and performance are driven by analytics, and then use those analytics to determine your automation frameworks and what you want to invest in automating and not just deflecting, but just giving more time back to your staff to do things that they have to do manually today. And that lets them provide a modern service experience, right? Omnichannel, for those that don't know that phrasing very well or don't see it often, it just means any way of taking in work. It can be email, it can be chat, it can be voice, it could be an AI voice agent, and it could be a portal and a form. And sometimes the best place is a portal and a form. But in general, what 3C Logic gives you is an agent that can handle that entire form intake process naturally or organically and log the whole interaction. And I honestly think a lot of people would prefer that conversation over clicking a bunch of drop downs and typing a bunch of words on either side, on IT, on any business workflow. And beyond that, that modern experience really comes into play with ServiceNow on the intelligence and prioritization and routing, right? Like getting things to the right people fast. And that is very, very challenging in a lot of organizations in and outside of IT, especially outside of IT, if that work is being handled through a shared mailbox or a distribution list or a Teams channel, you're constantly seeing this cherry picking of work, and you can't give consistent experience. You cannot really understand that experience because it's not logged anywhere. And getting that unified data into the platform lets you get those performance insights. To G's point on what I love about 3C Logic, and you'll cover this or maybe we'll hit on it, but keep in mind all the 3C Logic features are built in or very, very tightly integrated into ServiceNow. Every other contact center solution might integrate with ServiceNow, but it's not in ServiceNow. So you're feeding the data in, and from a user experience, having that all in one place, that call, that little box on the bottom right-hand corner, the last thing, that's a widget that's popping up from ServiceNow, and that whole conversation is directly into ServiceNow. It is a native integration. The platform's built on top of it. What that gives you is a unified data framework of all those conversations to create the action, to understand trends and demand, and most importantly, like give better service, but also save money in the long run. The more you automate, the less people you need to staff. And if you are looking at bringing more work into your IT staff, insourcing some of those functions, you really want to understand what it's going to cost you to support those things. And you're probably going to want to spend as little as possible to do that. And these tools and data visibility let you do that. AI does help a lot in that, to G's point. Bad ticket notes, bad categorizations, bad items create bad decisions. Putting AI in front of that decision-making process, even if it's just to be an orchestrator, is very, very helpful. So just imagine for those that use like Teams meeting transcriptions and things like that, how helpful that is. The ServiceNow takes that and lets you create action off of those ideas. You're not just getting the notes. They're part of a database that can create triggers and workflows and actions.
All right. So at the end of the day, this all sounds great. What's the impact, right? So for our audience, this is just one example. And if you happen to be, a law firm, well, you probably know, Cole, Scott, and Cassane, one of the largest civil law firms in the state of Florida. But I think the quote sort of says it all, right? And it speaks to really how we got started with today's conversation, which is what are the benefits of insourcing your operations, right? And in their case, I mean, they were able to get done faster with the same or fewer people, right? And they're not paying, more than they did for their older system. So, and it's not 3C Logic or ServiceNow. It is a combination of the two that's able to yield some of the results that you see on screen, whether it's a reduction in the amount of time people are waiting to be serviced, whether it's a reduction in the manual work that's performed by those in the background so they can go do more productive things, whether it's just the lower operating costs in general because you've been able to scale your operations and own the entire experience, as opposed to outsourcing it out and being subject simply to the results, right? Moving away from just ticket resolution and really focusing on the experience as well as the outcome. So we're coming to an end of today's session. Hopefully this was instructive, educational. Casey, why don't we just end with a few takeaways? If there's anything specific that you want to make sure people walk away from, what would they be?
Yeah, first, just understanding that this investment is not a small one, but it also doesn't have to be a massive one. There's entry points that let you modernize your internal service models without trying to take on more than you really can. And this is often driven through a number of methods, but the biggest one we're seeing is actually compliance driven or security driven. We want to consolidate our platform span across multiple applications into one platform that lets us get organic and granular, but also the most compliant platform in there, and also reduce complexity, less tools, less things to manage. And then once they align that service into the platform, they start looking for their advantages. They look for ROI. They tie it to business values, streams in the partner strategy or at the higher level, and ServiceNow can quickly adapt to those value streams. You can take there's modules in ServiceNow that let you tie everything you're doing to your entire business objectives, not just IT. And all of these things we talked about can play into these big picture service optimizations and making data-driven decisions and give you an advantage. The opportunity here isn't really just to modernize the help desk, and that is very important, don't get me wrong, but is to build a unified platform that gives you a foundation to support all of your legal, your firm. If you're in accounting and finance, there's a lot of things you can do on the accounting and tax side of automations with ServiceNow. It lets you start spanning out and getting less bespoke tools that only do one thing, and getting them into a platform that lets you see everything and get that top-down point of view.
All right. Well, with that, we're coming to the end here. I want to thank everybody that took the time to join us today. You may have questions. You may want to explore some of what we covered in more detail as it pertains to you specifically. If that's the case, ourselves here at 3C Logic, we welcome an opportunity to have that conversation. You can reach us at ServiceNow3clogic.com, relatively straightforward. And same thing with Casey and the team at Halo Kinetic. If you have questions for them, if you want to tap into their expertise, certainly Casey's been around the block and leverage their experience as well as their consulting services and hit on some of the things that we've tackled today. You can reach them as well at info@halokinetic.com. If I'm not mistaken, I know 3C Logic, but also the Halo Kinetic team will also be at ServiceNow's upcoming annual event in Las Vegas, Knowledge 26, which is a great opportunity to meet ourselves in person. If you want to have the conversation and maybe dive into some live demonstrations and so forth. So certainly don't be a stranger. But with that, we're going to close out. Hopefully today was instructive. We will continue here at 3C Logic to have sessions just like this one in the future. So if you found today useful, stay tuned. Keep an eye on our event schedule. Make sure to register for some of the upcoming events that we have both now into the summer. Casey, on behalf of the entire 3C Logic team, really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, happy to be here, and I will personally be at Knowledge. I know G will be there, so I hope to see some faces that may be watching this there. Come and talk to us, and if you want to reach out to me directly, I'm always available on LinkedIn as well. So shoot me a message if something piqued your interest, or feel free to email that info box. It'll come right to myself and a few of my colleagues.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Casey, for joining us today. Thanks to our audience for joining us. We will see you all next time. Bye.